Hi everyone, I hope you're having an amazing day. Today, we're going to dive deep into the heartfelt story we've just seen. From the quiet sunset to the emotional night where hidden feelings finally come to light. It's a journey full of warmth, reflection, and the kind of emotions that remind us what truly matters in life. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapters to come. It began on a quiet afternoon in a small town. Huyen gently reached out and took Dae's hand. Her eyes carried both joy and worry. "Dae, I have something to tell you," she said softly. Dae turned to her, his heartbeat quickening. "I'm pregnant." For a second, the world stopped. Joy, fear, disbelief, all swirled inside him at once. Could it really be true? Little Maya, that sweet, innocent girl who always saw the world with pure eyes, seemed to know something all along. But what comes next for Dee? A chapter of happiness, or another storm waiting on the horizon? Let's find out. This is the moment when Huyen said, "I'm pregnant." That afternoon, after a light rain, the sun peeked shyly through the clouds, spilling silver light across the courtyard. The air smelled of wet earth and straw smoke, and somewhere, freshly washed clothes swayed gently in the breeze. Huyen sat on the doorstep, a tiny shirt in her lap, smiling to herself. Sometimes, peace doesn't come from grand things. It comes from hearing your child's laughter in the distance and knowing that the man tending the fire outside isn't going anywhere this time. Maya ran toward her, hands covered in mud, her laughter ringing through the yard. "Mom, why are you smiling so much today?" she asked, her voice full of curiosity. Huyen looked at her daughter, those bright eyes shining under the sunlight, and brushed a few stray strands of hair from her forehead. "Because I'm going to play a little trick on Uncle D," she said playfully. "Want to help me?" Maya's eyes widened, sparkling with excitement. "Yes!" Their laughter echoed together, pure, bright, and light as the fading clouds above them. It was a sound that could wash away the last traces of darkness. By evening, the small house glowed in the warm orange hue of sunset. Dee was lighting the fire. The flames danced across his face, softening his usual calm expression into something tender. The sound of crackling wood, mixed with the faint drizzle outside, composing the melody so gentle it could soothe any heart. Then, Huyen stepped into the yard, her hands hidden behind her back. The family dog, Bibi, curled up beside Dee's feet, lifted his head to watch her. She looked serious, but there was a mischievous spark in her eyes. "Hey, you," she said softly. Dae turned, noticing her tone. "What is it? Something wrong?" She took a deep breath and brought her hands forward. In them was a small pregnancy test. She set it down on the wooden table between them, wordless, calm. The air stilled. Dee stared at it. His eyes twitched slightly. "Wait, what's this, Huyen? You already took the test?" She nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, and I think it shows 2 lines." Dee froze. 1 heartbeat, 2. Then the spoon in his hand slipped and clattered to the floor. His lips parted, but no words came. His eyes, a mix of shock, joy, fear, and wonder, darted between her and the test. He stepped forward, almost reaching for her hand. But she turned away, her shoulders trembling, then suddenly burst out laughing. Through her laughter, she said, "Look at your face." You look like you're about to faint." Dee blinked, half in confusion, half in disbelief. Later that night, when Dee went out to fetch more firewood, Huyen stayed sitting by the table. The oil lamp flickered, painting her calm but uneasy face in gold. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out another test. A new one, this time with 2 clear pink lines. Her fingers trembled as she held it. She stared at it for a long time, her lips pressed together, joy and fear mixing in her expression. A tear slid down her cheek, not from sadness, but from the quiet realization that life was growing inside her. She whispered softly into the dim room, "I'm not joking this time, Dee." Outside, the wind picked up again. The leaves whispered like they were announcing another coming storm. Not one of chaos, but one that brings life. In the middle of the dew-soaked courtyard, a woman sat still, embracing this tiny miracle. A faint, radiant smile curved her lips, fragile, yet glowing like dawn after the rain. The next morning, the world seemed reborn. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet soil and young vegetables from the garden. Birds chirped from the rooftop, and a rooster crowed somewhere in the distance. Day sat on the porch, quietly sharpening the handle of a small roasting pan for Maya, working with his usual patience and care. Sweat dotted his temples, but a gentle smile stayed on his lips. Then came the sound of light, hurried footsteps. Maya burst through the door, her laughter bright and full of life. She ran straight to Dee and hugged him tightly around the neck. "Hey there, my little princess," he said with a laugh. "Why are you so happy today?" Maya lifted her face, her cheeks glowing. "Uncle Dee, Mommy Huyen isn't lying to you anymore. Mommy's going to have a baby for Maya to hold." Her voice was as clear as a bell, yet those simple words made Dee's entire body go still. He blinked, frozen. What did you say?" "Mommy told me," Maya said proudly, her small head bobbing as she spoke. "She said I have to behave, because soon I'll be a big sister." Her laughter rang through the quiet yard. Every word hit Dee like a heartbeat. He turned toward the garden. There, Huyen was kneeling among the young plants, her hands buried in the soil, her hair catching the sunlight like soft silk. Each of her movements was careful, peaceful, and full of quiet strength. Dee's chest tightened as he watched her. Something deep stirred within him. Happiness, disbelief, hope. Is she really hiding this from me? He thought. If it's true, then I don't even know how to breathe from joy. Maya giggled again, still clinging to him. Mom said that when the baby comes, I'll sing to him every night, and you'll have to work harder. Dee laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that he hadn't felt in a long time. He hugged her tighter. You know what, Maya? You just gave me the best news in the world. She smiled, proud of herself. Her little eyes curved like crescent moons. Maya was good at keeping secrets, but this one was too big. And her laughter filled the air like chimes in the breeze. Dee glanced toward Huyen again. She had no idea that her daughter had just told him everything. The sunlight glowed across her shoulders. For the first time in a long while, Dee felt peace settle deep in his heart. After so much pain, he thought, maybe God is giving us a small miracle. Proof that love can grow again, even in the soil once watered by tears. Maya ran off into the garden, calling for her mother. Dee stayed where he was, still smiling. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Sometimes, you don't need a confirmation. Just one look at someone's face is enough to believe. The wind passed softly through the yard, carrying the scent of herbs and wet earth, and something else too: quiet joy. Day looked up at the open sky and whispered under his breath, "If it's true, I swear I'll never let you or the baby be afraid again. Even if the storm returns, I'll be the one holding up this roof." From the garden, Huyen turned, her face calm and unreadable. She smiled faintly at him, and beside her, little Maya danced between the vegetable rows, singing, "Baby, come quickly. Maya wants to hold you." The final rays of sunlight brushed the yard in gold. It looked like an ordinary day. But really, it was the quiet beginning of a miracle, born between a child's laughter and a man's trembling heart that had finally learned how to love again. The golden light of sunset stretched across the garden, wrapping the rows of vegetables in a soft, honey-like glow. Huyen was still there, bent over the soil, pulling out tiny weeds with her slender hands. Her hair was messy, some strands sticking to her cheeks, but in that simple image, there was an unshakable calmness, as if every pain of the past had quietly melted away. Dee stood under the porch, still holding the wooden handle of the roasting stick. He didn't even remember why he had stopped working. Since Maya's words that morning, something inside him had shifted. Something warm, fragile, and trembling. He couldn't stop watching her. The way she moved gently between the garden rows, the way the sunlight caught the edge of her hair, it all made his chest tighten. For so long, he'd carried guilt and distance and silence. And now, watching her like this, he felt as though time itself had given him one more chance. From the garden, Maya's cheerful voice rang out, "Mom, let me help water the plants." Huyen looked up and smiled. "Okay, but be careful not to get your clothes all muddy again." Dee chuckled softly, sitting down on the step, resting his arms on his knees as he watched them laugh together. There was a tenderness in that scene that filled his chest until it almost hurt, a kind of quiet happiness that didn't need to be spoken aloud. For a long time, he just sat there, letting the sound of their laughter wash over him. All the years of loneliness, of pain and regret seemed to fade away like smoke in the wind. And in that moment, deep in his heart, one thought rose clear and certain. I want to stay with them. I want to protect them for as long as I live. When night finally fell, the house glowed in the soft yellow light of an old oil lamp. Shadows danced gently across the wooden walls. Inside, Maya had fallen asleep, a faint smile lingering on her lips, one tiny hand still clutching the edge of her blanket. Huyen tucked her in carefully, brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead, and then quietly stepped outside. The air was cool and crisp. Crickets chirped in the distance. The wind rustled through the palms, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming herbs. Dee was already on the porch, leaning against a wooden pillar, gazing up at the sky. The deep blue night stretched wide above them, scattered with a handful of shy stars. She sat down beside him without saying a word. For a while, they just listened to the sounds of the night, to the calm rhythm of their own breathing. "You're still awake?" she asked finally, her voice low and soft. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "The air's too peaceful tonight. Feels like something's changing." They fell quiet again. The wind swayed the palm leaves, tapping lightly against the roof. After a moment, Dee turned to her. The warm light from the lamp spilled across her face, revealing her thoughtful eyes and the faint quiver in her lips. He hesitated. Then he spoke. Huyen, Maya told me something today. She stiffened slightly, her eyes flickering. She did? What did she say? Dee swallowed hard, his hands tightening together. She said that you're pregnant. The world seemed to pause. The chirping stopped. The wind grew still. Only the sound of their breathing filled the space between them. Huyen turned her face away, avoiding his gaze. She tried to smile, but her smile trembled. She's just a child, she murmured. You shouldn't believe everything she says. She must have misunderstood. Day shook his head gently. Maya doesn't lie to me. His voice softened, steady, but full of feeling. You don't have to say anything. I just want to know. Is it true? For a long time, she didn't answer. Her hands clenched on her knees. Her shoulders quivered. The tears she'd been holding back began to shimmer in her eyes. Then she spoke, her voice fragile. You know, I was afraid. When I saw the 2 lines, my heart was so happy, but at the same time, I was terrified. She paused, swallowing her tears. I was afraid I couldn't keep this happiness, afraid life would play tricks on me again. Dee didn't move at first. Then slowly, he reached out and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Huyen, he said softly, no one's going to hurt you. No one's laughing. If it's true, then thank you. Thank you for trusting me again, for daring to start over, even when your heart has already been broken. Her eyes lifted to his, full of emotion, fear, pain, and a fragile hope all tangled together. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sorrow this time. They were tears of release. Dee pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She let her head rest against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was warm, grounding, real. Outside, the wind stirred again, brushing softly against the rows of vegetables. The smell of the fresh earth drifted in, sweet and alive. Dee bent his head slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to hide anymore. Whatever happens, I'll be here. I'll protect this peace we have. Huyen didn't answer with words. She just nodded, her tears wetting his shirt. But her lips curved into a small, trembling smile. The night deepened around them, yet somehow it felt brighter, because between them, a tiny light had just been born. From inside the room, a small voice murmured in the dark, Baby, sleep well. Maya will take care of you. Her childish whisper floated through the air like a gentle song. On the porch, under the soft glow of the oil lamp, 2 people who had weathered so many storms stood silently, hands entwined, waiting for the dawn together. By morning, the light was soft and golden again. The wind danced through the garden, and dew clung to the young leaves. Dee stood by the doorway, watching as Huyen hung freshly washed clothes on the line. The fabric fluttered like white wings against the sky. Maya was running around her mother, chasing a butterfly, her laughter ringing out clear and pure. And in that simple, ordinary moment, Dee felt an overwhelming peace. No grand promises, no dramatic confessions, just quiet love, just the warmth of being there. He walked toward them slowly, the morning sun warming his back. Do you need help? He asked. Huyen turned, smiling, eyes squinting in the light. You? Helping with laundry? That'll be the day. He grinned. Hey, I'm serious. I'm a changed man now. Maya giggled, tugging at his sleeve. Uncle Dee, can you help me hang the small ones? Mommy says I can't reach. He crouched down beside her. All right, little one. but you have to promise not to splash me again." Maya nodded solemnly, then immediately flicked a few drops of water at him, laughing. Huyen shook her head, smiling quietly as she watched them play. And in that laughter, in that sunlight, there was no trace of the old pain, no shadow of the storms that once tore their hearts apart. Only love remained, steady, humble, alive. Later that evening, as twilight approached, Huyen stood in the doorway, one hand on her belly. The faint breeze lifted her hair as she gazed toward the horizon, where the last light of the day met the darkening sky. Inside, Dee was fixing Maya's little toy, humming softly under his breath. She turned to watch him. The way he concentrated, his brow furrowed, his gentle hands at work. For a brief moment she thought, maybe this is what happiness really looks like. Not perfection, not the absence of fear, but this, quiet moments of care, the warmth of shared laughter, and the fragile miracle of new life growing inside her. She closed her eyes, whispering softly to herself, "Thank you for giving me a reason to believe again." Outside, the wind carried the scent of the earth, and somewhere in the garden, Maya's voice echoed once more, bright and full of life. "Baby, grow fast. Maya's waiting to sing you a song." Dee looked up and smiled at Huyen. She smiled back, her hand still resting over her heart. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Because love, quiet, simple, and steadfast, had finally found its way home. As the sun slowly sets behind the hills, warmth fades, and memories begin to rise. Day and Huyen share a quiet moment filled with unspoken words, where every glance hides a story of love, loss, and longing. The night falls, carrying whispers of the past and the weight of emotions neither can escape. Beneath the dim lantern light, the truth trembles on their lips. The confession, years in the making. But just when hearts seem ready to open, a distant sound breaks the silence, pulling them back into uncertainty. Was it destiny trying to reunite them, or warning them to stay apart? The answer awaits in the next chapter.